If you want to know why the Percy Jackson TV show is coming out in December, it's because every time we get new information about the show, it feels like Christmas, so it's only fitting. Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Shocker, we're talking about Percy Jackson. What else would we be talking about? So, in case you missed it, New York Comic Con happened this past weekend, and Percy Jackson had a panel there, which is super exciting. It was about an hour long, and they talked all about the show. They showed 3 different clips from the show. So I'm here to recap the entire panel for you and catch you up on anything that you missed. Now, I wasn't at New York Comic Con. All this information that I'm getting is off of Twitter and people that were actually there. I'll put some usernames of Twitter users that have been really helpful in me gathering all the information for this YouTube video, so make sure you go check out their Twitters. So first things first, here's who the panel consisted of. I don't know if they were planning on having these people there the whole time. Obviously, none of the actors were at the panel because SAG-AFTRA is still on strike. It would be really awesome if the studios would pay their actors. I just want to say that first and foremost. It makes me really sad seeing all this awesome stuff happening with Percy Jackson. Like at New York Comic Con, they had these really big screens and all these huge banners for Percy Jackson, and it makes me really sad that these kids and every other actor that's involved with the show doesn't get to go and experience this life-changing thing. Franchises get rebooted all the time, but Percy Jackson isn't necessarily getting rebooted. It's getting its first ever real, faithful adaptation, and these actors don't get to enjoy the press for it leading up to it because these studios suck and are not paying their actors. So, just want to say that first and foremost. But I actually really enjoyed who the panel consisted of. I'm someone who really likes behind the scenes stuff and learning all the tiny little small details of what had to come together to make shows like this possible. And I really like hearing from the artistic side of things. So I did really enjoy the people that they had on this panel. The panel consisted of executive producer and showrunner John Steinberg, executive producer Dan Schatz, the director of the first 2 episodes James Bobbin, the production designer Dan Hanna, costume designer Tish Monahan, VFX supervisor Eric Henry, and ILM VFX supervisor Jeff White. If you don't know what ILM stands for, it stands for Industrial Light and Magic. I think it's a thing that George Lucas founded. First thing they talked about is how all of the panel members quickly realized while working on set that everybody involved in the project has some sort of connection to the Percy Jackson books. Whether you're an executive producer, a director, an actor, you have a connection to these books. I want to say it was one of the executive producers. He talked about how his daughter went to college for Greek mythology because she loved the Percy Jackson books so much. Lin-Manuel Miranda, his kids love these books. They're obsessed with them, so that's how he has a connection to the stories. We know Walker Scobell himself is a really big fan of the books. Quite literally everybody has a connection to the books, and that is honestly why Percy Jackson is such a special franchise. So at the beginning of the panel, they showed the first 7 minutes of the Percy Jackson show. I'm gonna do my best to recount the first 7 minutes for you guys. I'll keep it brief, don't worry. There might be some things I missed because like I said, this is just from what I could collect on Twitter. There are leaks of the footage out there, very grainy, kind of crappy iPhone quality because they weren't allowed to record in there, but some people snuck it. And I'm not saying that there's a Google Drive of all the footage that people got at the panel, but I am saying that maybe if that interests you, you might want to read my full description under this video. But I'm not going to include any of the footage in this video because I don't want this YouTube video getting taken down. I'm just going to explain it with my very colorful and descriptive words. So everyone close your eyes, and we are now going to picture the first 7 minutes of the show. Basically, it starts with Walker narrating the first couple pages of The Lightning Thief, which we've already heard him do. We heard it in, I think, the first teaser trailer we ever got. Makes me really excited that that's the opening to the show. When we got that in that D23 teaser over a year ago, the first thing I said was, I really hope that that's in the show because that's kind of iconic. And it is, so that's exciting. We then get to see a younger Percy Jackson who's probably around the age of 2nd grade. And we see young Percy witnessing all these really weird things around him. He's seeing a bunch of monsters. I saw someone describe that he sees a truck that also kind of looks like a rhino. He also apparently sees a Pegasus on top of a building, and a lot of people are saying that that's Blackjack, which is kind of cool if we're seeing a Blackjack cameo this early in the show. And then essentially, young Percy goes to a therapist, and this therapist kind of tells him, Percy, these things you're seeing aren't real, because of course no one would think that they're real. Then we go to present day. We're at the Met with Percy and the rest of Yancey Academy. Chiron is talking about all the statues around them, and he says that you should pick whatever statue speaks to you. We see Percy look up at the Perseus statue, and then we get another flashback of young Percy with his mom. They talk about how Percy is named after Perseus, and Sally says something along the lines of, not every monster looks like a monster, and not every hero looks like a hero. Sally then tells the whole story of Perseus, and she finishes the story by saying, against all odds, he managed to find his way to a happy ending. In the flashback, Percy's name is called, which causes him to snap out of the flashback, but he accidentally says mom out loud, which is super embarrassing because obviously his mom is not there with him. I feel like that's a very universal experience. I know I've definitely accidentally called a teacher mom before. Very embarrassing. Top 10 most embarrassing experiences that someone can go through at a young age, for sure. Then we get our first look at Nancy Bumblefoot, who is Percy's resident bully. She's obviously making fun of him for being like, Mom. She's like, right over here, sweetie. Then we have Mrs. Dodds being like, Mr. Jackson, you will control yourself. And Percy's like, I didn't even do anything. And Nancy's like, he can't help it, Mrs. Dodds. Percy's special. Then Chiron comes in, he stops the bullying. He's talking to Percy and he hands him Riptide. I think Percy like broke his pen or something when he snapped out of his flashback or whatever, because the audio is a little hard to hear, but I think Chiron hands Percy the pen and he's like, hold on to that. It's a really powerful weapon. It then cuts to Grover and Percy eating their lunch outside of the Met. From what I've seen from both like the recorded footage and from trailers, Arian as Grover is genuinely going to be such a scene stealer. Every line that he delivers is genuinely so funny, and he seems to have really good comedic timing. I feel like, obviously we all love Percy, and obviously we're all super excited about Annabeth, but I feel like we're all kind of sleeping on Grover. But so then Percy talks about wanting to stand up to Nancy, talks about how he wants to like shove her in the nearest dumpster or something, and Grover says, if there's one thing I know about bullies, it's that you should never stand up to them. And Percy's like, that doesn't sound right. Then Nancy throws food or something at Grover and Percy, and that causes Percy to stand up and go over to Nancy like he's about to fight her. But before Percy can even touch Nancy, he accidentally uses his powers and Nancy goes flying backwards into the fountain behind her, and then she yells, Percy pushed me. And that's the end of the first 7 minutes of the show. I think we can already agree that this sounds spectacular. It sounds very book accurate. I like that, they're giving us some flashbacks at the beginning. They're kind of working up Percy as a kid. They're working up Percy's relationship with his mom. It's better than just like jumping in and the very first scene is them at the Met. I like the flashbacks. Obviously, we all want this TV show to be as book accurate as possible, but I genuinely am not opposed to Rick deciding to add things such as flashbacks or adding certain character choices if he feels like it's going to make these characters better and more dynamic and make more sense for the show. So things getting added is not an issue with me. I know a lot of people are like very strong book purists. I'm okay. I've said this in other videos and I'll say it again. One thing I really hope we get to see is flashbacks of Sally and Poseidon. I think it'd be really sweet to be able to see the two of them and like them in love or how they fell in love or something like that. I think that'd be really cool to see. So then after they showed the first 7 minutes of the show, they showed a couple of like still images of Camp Half-Blood. It looks like we're seeing the inside of Cabin 11, which we do see in one of the trailers. I'm really looking forward to hopefully exploring the inside of other cabins. We still have yet to see Athena's cabin, which in case you didn't know, Athena is my godly parent. Proud Athena daughter right here. This necklace I wear all the time, you cannot see it from where you are, but this necklace I wear all the time, it has an owl on it for Athena. Cannot wait to see what her cabin looks like. Cannot wait to see the inside of it so I know exactly where my bunk is gonna be. The production designer, Dan Henna, talks about certain set pieces like the dining hall and the big house, which is super exciting because those are things that were not in the movies. I think we see Percy on like the porch of the big house in one of the trailers, but I'm excited to see it in full. I feel like not enough people are talking about the production designer being Dan Henna. If you guys don't know, I've made a video like a couple months ago. I think it's titled like everything we know about the Percy Jackson show so far. In that video, I go into a lot of detail about crew members like Dan Henna and Tish Monahan, but if you don't know, Dan Henna worked on Lord of the Rings with Peter Jackson, and I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, and I think the set pieces in Lord of the Rings are so incredibly beautiful. So I'm very excited to have somebody like Dan Henna working on Percy Jackson. I think that he's a very impressive production designer, and I just think having him on the show is going to be a very, very, very good thing. Then we have Tish Monahan, who is the costume designer, and she talked about the making of the Camp Half-Blood shirts. She talked about how they tested about like 20 different shades of orange, which is actually a lot of work. You guys don't know this about me, but my major in college was industrial design, and because of that, I basically had to take a class on colors. And do you know like how insane it is to find 20 different shades of orange. The variations can only be so different after so many shades. Not to mention they had to test the shirts in a bunch of different environments. They had to make sure that the orange looked good outside, inside, in daylight, at night, when it's raining, all these things. It seemed like a lot of work when she was explaining it, and I find it very impressive. But they seemingly settled on an orange. This is the official Camp Half-Blood shirt from Hot Topic for the TV show. I know a lot of Percy Jackson fans, we all owned like our own Camp Half-Blood shirts from like Etsy or wherever you buy them from. I don't know if it's translating well to my camera. The orange is definitely a much lighter orange than the Camp Half-Blood shirts that we've had, but I really like it. It's not an abrasive orange, which is good because I've always kind of judged the fact that the Camp Half-Blood shirts are orange. I'm always like, why did Aphrodite not like speak up and be like, hey, maybe let's make the shirts like green or something? But if you want your official Camp Half-Blood t-shirt, you can get it off of Hot Topic. They are super cute, and I do really like the new logo. Tish Monahan also talked about how different cabins have like different aesthetics to their Camp Half-Blood shirts. Like for example, the Ares cabin, we're going to see them have a lot of cuts and rips on their Camp Half-Blood shirts because, you know, God of War, you guys can put the pieces together. The ILM VFX supervisor, Jeff White, talked about the benefits of them being able to use something called a volume screen instead of using a blue screen. And he mentioned that moving forward with the show, you know, expecting the show to get renewed for more seasons, moving forward, they want to like fully eliminate blue screen and they want to stick with volume screen. If you don't know what a volume screen is, I'll give you a brief explanation of it. It's basically like a really, really huge, giant LED screen. Kind of, I think it's built in a circle most of the time. It's a combination of a physical set, either a physical set like adding the ground or adding like, for example, cabins or whatever. And then the background, instead of being a green screen or a blue screen, is the volume screen. Two examples of projects that have used a volume screen, in case you're wondering, are The Batman, which is a very cinematic and beautiful movie, and also I believe The Mandalorian Season 3 used a volume screen. A volume screen is definitely newer technology, but I think it makes it look a lot better than a green screen. They told a really cute story about how apparently the kids hooked up a Nintendo Switch to the giant volume screen and they played like life-size Mario Kart, which sounds really fun. VFX supervisor Eric Henry talked about the development of the monsters in the show, like the Chimera and the Minotaur. He notes that they wanted to make the Minotaur like appropriately scary, and like they mentioned how it can transition from running on all fours to standing really tall on its two legs. I'm pretty sure they also mentioned how they had a practical like life-size built Minotaur, and they actually had Walker like on top of it, sort of like riding a bull. You know how people get on the back of a bull, like a mechanical bull, and ride it? They sort of had that. So Walker was just like on this practical huge Minotaur being tossed around. The people on the panel obviously praised all of the actors, but they really heavily praised Walker and how he really is so talented, and getting shots with him was super easy. He rarely had to do multiple takes of something. Even in the rain, like, he was a trooper. Then they showed the Minotaur scene. So once again, I'm gonna do my best to recount and explain what they saw in the Minotaur scene. The scene starts with all of them in the car already, Sally driving them to Camp Half-Blood. Percy's pretty much confused and irritated the whole scene. Grover shows Percy his horns and explains how they're hidden by the mist. Percy goes, "What's a mist?" And Grover's like, "Not a mist, the mist." Grover explains to Percy what the mist is. He also explains what a satyr is, and he explains to him essentially what Camp Half-Blood is. Then we see the Minotaur behind the car, running after them on all fours. Apparently there's a giant lightning bolt behind the Minotaur. And fun fact, the Minotaur is in tidy whities. The costume designer talked about how they had to test the tidy whities for him, and they had to make a bunch because the Minotaur has a 102-inch waist, which is really big. But apparently the Minotaur feels like a very scary presence, which is good. Then the Minotaur catches up to the car and he puts his horns through the window on Sally's side. Apparently Sally blocks the horns with the wheel of the car, and apparently Sally's doing some like Fast and Furious moves. The car's going backwards, the car's going sideways. Sally's crushing it. I'm number one Sally Jackson stan right here. And then, according to some tweets I saw, now I'm 100% sure, the horn of the Minotaur breaks off in the wheel of the car. And then that was the end of the scene. So it was a little bit shorter, obviously, than the first 7 minutes of the show. After that, the panel members started talking a little bit more about the cast members. James Bobbin, the director of the first 2 episodes, really praised Jason Mantzoukas as Mr. D. And then Dan Schatz talked about how a lot of the actors are genuinely perfect for their roles because of their outside connections to it. For example, Glenn Turman, who plays Chiron, literally runs a camp for horses. Then we got first looks at certain characters and all of our gods in the show. Some of these characters we already have first looks of because we've seen them in trailers, but some of them we don't. Basically, we just got a bunch of HD photos of these characters, and I'll run through them for you right now. Just a forewarning, if I mispronounce any names, I am very sorry. I'm not the best with pronunciations, okay? Most notably for me, we got to see Charlie Bushnell as Luke, which is super exciting because if you've been watching my videos about Percy Jackson, you know that I always talk about how they're hiding Luke from us and we really haven't seen him all that much. And of course I know Luke's not the biggest part of the first book, so it makes sense that there's not a lot of screen time of him. He's not really a big deal until sort of the end of the book. Trust me, I get that. That doesn't mean that I don't want to see him though. So we finally got, an HD look at Charlie as Luke. We got a good HD photo of Dior Goodjohn as Clarice LaRue. Love her. We're going to talk about her more in a second. We got another photo of Lance Reddick as Zeus. The panel members talked about Lance Reddick and how amazing it was to get to know him and how he really was such an incredible Zeus. It's always so sad thinking about how he's no longer with us, but I am very excited to see his portrayal of this character. We get another look at Toby Stephens as Poseidon. Then we got a better look at Jay Duplass as Hades. A lot of people find it super interesting that he's in green and not all black like you would kind of assume Hades to be. Of course, we get to see another look at Adam Copeland as Ares. We've seen a bunch of him in short little trailers. They're really honing in on the fact that yes, this show does include Ares, unlike the movie. We get a good photo of Jason Mantzoukas as Mr. D, Timothy Omenson as Hephaestus, of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes. A lot of people are having an issue with this specific photo. Here's my piece on it. If you follow me on Twitter, you know how I feel. I like Lin-Manuel Miranda. I think that the hate for him is really weird and kind of forced, both within the Percy Jackson fandom and outside of the Percy Jackson fandom. I get if Lin is not your ideal Hermes cast. I get if he's not what you were picturing. That's fine. I totally understand that. But I just think, as a fandom, we defend any and all casting in the show, except for Lin for some reason. Everyone just seems to want to hate him. But for me, if I trust Rick with one casting, I'm going to trust Rick with all casting. I don't think Rick would cast Lin as Hermes if he didn't see him as Hermes. Pretty sure in one of Rick's blog posts, he even talks about how when they were writing the show, when they wrote Hermes into the show, the lines that they were writing, Rick was like, oh, why can I kind of see like Lin-Manuel Miranda delivering these lines? I just think Lin is very talented and he's very successful, and I just think it's super weird that people are hating on him. I'm also somebody who, I get really irritated when people try to judge a casting for a role before we've even seen the person act as the role. Like, all we've seen of Lin is pictures as Hermes. We haven't seen him act it yet. We don't really even have a lot of examples of Lin as an actor. He really only does stuff on Broadway, and then he writes a lot of songs for Disney movies, but we haven't really seen him do a lot of acting. So I find it really weird to see people just judging it so harshly when we trust Rick with everything else, but we're gonna disrespect and shit on his casting for Hermes. I don't know. I just don't get it. Not for me personally. I'm very excited to see Lin in this role. And then people are complaining about this photo. They're like, why is he in a hoodie? He looks just like himself. He just looks like Lin-Manuel Miranda. And you could say that about any of the actors. Sorry, Walker looks exactly like Walker Scobell. Like, nothing's really changed. You know what I mean? And he's in a hoodie because when the gods are amongst other humans, they portray themselves as humans so that they blend in. That's something we know. To me, this photo pretty much confirms that when we see Hermes, we're going to see him in the casino scene, because it literally just looks like he's sitting at a casino table. Why can't he be gambling in a hoodie? Who said that gods can't be comfortable? We don't get mad that Poseidon is constantly described to be wearing like a fisherman shirt. Just because he's not in a suit like Zeus doesn't mean that it's bad that he's in a hoodie. I don't know. I just don't get it. I don't understand the hate for Lin in this role, but that's my 2 cents on it. Feel free to disagree if you want to. We get to see Glenn Turman as Chiron, Virginia Cole as Sally Jackson, which, by the way, is so funny because ever since the most recent trailer has dropped, anytime I make a video with her in it, I'm getting comments saying that I look exactly like her, which is very sweet. I'll take it. I think she's really pretty. Rick, listen, if you're listening and you ever want to give us those flashbacks that I mentioned of a young Sally Jackson and a young Poseidon falling in love or whatever, I got you. I'm free. I'm available 24/7. Just let me know. Give me a call. Shoot me an email. I'm there. Moving on though. Tim Sharp as Gabe Ugliano, Megan Mullally as Miss Dodds, Suzanne Cryer as Echidna, and last but definitely not least, Jessica Parker Kennedy as Medusa. This photo, gagged. Absolutely, she's eating it up. I've seen people on Twitter be like, oh, Jessica Parker Kennedy, I wasn't aware of your game. And I'm like, for me, I've been a fan of Jessica Parker Kennedy ever since Another Cinderella Story. All right, I'm so excited to see her as Medusa. The whole panel talks about what they're most excited for the show, and they kind of come to the consensus that they're most excited for the Chimera and Cerberus. Then Rick and Becky make a special appearance, which was super cute and exciting. Then they announced they're going to show one more clip to the crowd, and they showed them the capture the flag scene. So once again, everybody close your eyes and let my beautiful storytelling take you on a journey while I explain to you what the capture the flag scene looks like. So the clip starts out with amazing fight choreography, mainly from Luke and the Hermes cabin. So it looks like the show is definitely going to highlight and emphasize how Luke is a very talented swordsman. Apparently we get to see Chris Rodriguez, and he turns to Luke and he says, so what do we know? And Luke responds, don't worry, Annabeth has a plan, Percy's on it. Smash cut to Percy at the top of the woods doing the floss dance. Now, as someone who's 23, the floss dance is not something that makes me laugh. I, however, think it's very on brand for a 12-year-old boy bored in the woods to be doing the stupid floss dance. Then it cuts to him trying to pee in the woods, looking around, and then it cuts to him petting a lizard. Basically, all of this is a really good way of showcasing Percy's ADHD, which I feel like is something that definitely lacked in the movies. It emphasized Percy's dyslexia, but it didn't really highlight his ADHD at all. As somebody with ADHD, this collection of clips is very funny. I get it. It cuts to Percy lying down, bored out of his mind, and Clarice and like 2 other Ares cabin members kind of sneak up behind him. I'm not sure of like the exact sequence of the lines, but I do know that Clarice has this line where she says, glory is fine, revenge is more fun. And Dior kind of eats up that line delivery. I cannot tell a lie. It's very Clarice. But so she says that line, and then she kind of does this thing with her spear, which sort of makes it like electrify or like heat up or whatever. And this causes Percy to like scramble for his shield. Percy says something along the lines of, isn't maiming like against the rules? And then Clarice says something like, damn, I guess I won't have dessert privileges anymore. And then she goes, listen, the truth is, I don't care about killing you or maiming you. I just want you to admit that you're a fraud. Percy then tries to run away, but they catch up to him and he falls over. Then there's a really awesome fight sequence again between Percy, Clarice, and her 2 friends. And Percy seems to be holding his own for a while. He manages to break Clarice's spear, causing her to scream out in anger. Clarice grabs Percy by the armor and like lifts him up, causing him to just like dangle there. But then they hear a noise behind Clarice, they turn around and they see Luke holding the red flag with the Camp Half-Blood logo on it. Clarice drops Percy and returns back to her capture the flag team. Percy's on the ground and we hear a not bad hero. And then Annabeth takes off her Yankees cap and she appears on the beach. And Percy's like, have you been there the whole time? And Annabeth's just like, yes. And Percy's like, you've been there the whole time and you didn't help me? And she's like, yes. Then Annabeth helps Percy up and she says his name like she's about to say something really deep or profound or whatever. And like the music is swelling. And then she just shoves him into the lake behind him. And she's just like, sorry. Percy gets up and he's like, what's the matter with you? And he's like wiping the water off of his face. But then we see his cuts starting to heal from the water. And like the music is like, ooh. And everyone's kind of like, And then Percy's like, I don't understand. And then that's the end of the clip. That's our first line that we've heard from Annabeth, like as an audience. Obviously, it's not her first line in the show, but that's the first line we've heard from her. And Leah Jeffries is just so Annabeth, you guys. I know I say that in every video, but she's just so good. All the kids are good. Everything looks fantastic. Perfect. Not one note, not a single note. But then that's it. That's the end of the panel. That's the last thing they showed. And then they wrapped it up because they were out of time. Long story short, I think the show, once again, is going to be fantastic. I think the humor is definitely catered to a sort of younger audience, whether it's what they're saying, what they're doing, or kind of how the line was delivered. But that doesn't mean that the older Percy Jackson fans aren't going to be able to enjoy the show or laugh at the show, because like I mentioned earlier, I don't find the floss dance funny. Like if somebody was in my room right now and they're like, hey Cameron, look at this, and started doing the floss dance, I'd be like, the fuck are you doing? But because it's Percy and I know Percy's a 12-year-old boy, him doing the floss dance when he's bored is like a little like a little breath will come out of my nose. You know what I mean? Like, okay, that's so 12-year-old boy to do. You know, it's not necessarily 20-year-old humor, but the show doesn't consist of 20-year-olds. The show consists of 12-year-olds. And then we've got a couple of teenagers sprinkled in there, and then we've got our adults. What I'm trying to say is the humor seems very in tune with the humor that's in the Percy Jackson books. Like, all the humor has the very same tone, so we're in good hands when it comes to that. It also seems like all of the extra stuff they're adding to the show is going to be extremely beneficial, like the flashbacks and all that stuff. I'm looking forward to that. That's probably going to be what I'm most excited for, because obviously, you know, if you've read the books, you know the story, so we know what's going to happen, but we don't know what they're adding, and that's what's exciting, and that's what's unknown to us. I feel like I always close out these videos in the exact same way by just praising the crap out of the show, because I really am so excited for it. Like, this is something I've been looking forward to for 3 years now, and it's like 2 months away. That's crazy. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this made you feel like you were caught up on everything they talked about at the panel. Make sure you check me out on my other social media accounts, because I talk about Percy Jackson a lot over there. I'm always tweeting about Percy Jackson. I'm always putting stuff in my Instagram stories when they announce new things, or when they talk about new things, or when we get any sort of Percy Jackson information. My TikTok is basically these long YouTube videos shortened. Make sure you check out all my other Percy Jackson videos, because there are a lot of them. I have a Percy Jackson playlist that you can watch that just has all the videos on there. Clearly, I talk about Percy Jackson a lot, and that's probably only going to ramp up as we get more information on the show and as the show comes out. I plan to do episode reactions to every episode of the show, like I did with the ending of Stranger Things season 4. You guys seem to really enjoy that video, so that's something you can look forward to. According to Becky Riordan, we're gonna have a trailer, like a full-length trailer, coming very soon. I'm talking like 3.5 minutes, because so far we've really only had, like, I think the longest teaser trailer we have so far is about 1 minute and 30 seconds. So when that trailer comes out, you guys know where to come to. I'm going to have a reaction to it. We're going to have a breakdown of the trailer, all that fun stuff. So yeah, make sure you subscribe here so that you don't miss a single Percy Jackson video. And like I said, follow me on my other social medias. Comment down below what you're most excited to see in the show, or if you're excited for the show at all. And also, comment down below who your godly parent is. I'm kind of curious to see, like, where everybody falls. Like I said, I'm a child of Athena, and let me know if you like the casting for your godly parent. Like, for me, Athena's not in season 1, so I'm out of luck until they cast her, so hopefully the show gets renewed. If your godly parent is casted, let me know how you feel about the casting. If you're a child of Hermes, do you like Lin-Manuel Miranda as your dad? Let me know. But that about does it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!